One of the nice things about coming to the temple is you realize there's some part of you that never quite leaves the temple. You just remember and hang out with that part that's always here. It's always tending the vastness and knowing its place in the universe. Yuan Wu, who was the compiler of the Blue Cliff Record, wrote letters about the meditation path. He called it the Great Cause. I saw a forum recently that said, well, what does he mean by the great cause? Somehow, as you enter here, you just start to feel the beingness of your life, of your body, of your house. You've entered already the great cause. You don't have to do anything. You realize, in fact, you can't do anything to stop it. You're just part of this great cause. So, hi, everyone. It's funny the strange little things that make up our lives on a day-to-day basis. Somehow I have no idea what John was going to talk about today, which is kind of interesting. I have like the tiny little notes he left in the same thing that you got. So we get to make it up together, but I did like where he was going. And when I realized I'd forgotten to engage the recording and I heard the, little voice that appears that says, this meeting is being recorded, I was reminded of the other day, my partner texts me, and apparently her Siri in the car had started talking in a completely different voice. It had had a woman's voice, and it suddenly had a man's voice, and she had no idea how this happened. And so she asked it, Siri, why are you now talking in a man's voice? And Siri said, I'm inherently genderless, like cucumbers and fish. And she said, but Siri, what's going on? And Siri just refused to answer. And two great things about this. One is this is exactly the kind of thing that would happen to my partner. Like the world just sort of, I don't know, rebels in strange ways through technology and through all sorts of little things. But the second thing is it just like there are 100,000 things a day that begin to make up a life. And they're poignant and they're absurd and they're 100,000 things at once. And somehow that passage about that John referenced about the boundless wind and moon, the eye within eyes, inexhaustible heaven and earth, the light beyond light, the willow dark, the flower bright, 10,000 houses. Knock on any door and someone will answer. And it's such a beautiful, poetic, it makes me think of one of those grand cathedral doors to the Blue Cliff. And yet your door can also be the strange, rebellious voice of Siri, or a strange insect in your room, or 100,000, 10,000. Knock on any door, every bit of your life contains the universe somehow. And that's good to know. I was I feel a little bit like there's a great koan where Yang Shan wakes up in a dream and he's at Maitreya's house, and Maitreya is the future Buddha. There's some beautiful statues of Maitreya, actually, I was seeing recently, and someone says, the person in the third seat will teach today. And Yang Shan looks around and he's in the third seat. He thinks, oh, huh, okay. And so he gets up and he just bangs the gavel. He just feels being there. And I'm coming back from the last few days. I was not far from a few people on this call. I was at a very dear friend's memorial service in the Napa area. And I can feel how my heart is still very full with what happened. A few of you have heard me talk about this just a little bit, but this is a very old friend of my partner's who within about a week or 10 days learned that she had metastatic lung cancer and then passed away. And there's all the things you might imagine with that, but she was 59 years old. And getting to speak with her husband quite a bit more about everything that had transpired in those days, it was interesting because in so many ways, absolutely everything was on their side in terms of it not going the way it went. All the medical care answered and was prompt. All the medicines should have been working properly. All the nurses and scans, and like it almost felt as though every door opened that to this bad news there should have been a very different outcome. And yet, that's not what happened. And you know, the other bit John had mentioned in his piece is the verse from one of probably the most robust koans in Zen, which is, the great way is not difficult, it just avoids picking and choosing. And you could feel, I could feel, particularly in listening to her husband give the eulogy at this service, which was, he was very dear, actually, because one of the ways that he prepared for the service was to go back and read. They've been together 39 years or something, and she had kept every single card and letter that he had written to her. And so he went back and started reading them all just to feel, you know, what has our life been? What has our love been? And he said he quickly noticed a pattern. And the pattern was that mostly he talked about himself. And but mostly what he talked about was how lucky he felt to be with her. And you could feel it was interesting to be in the space. And it was, you know, it was this beautiful old stone church in St. Helena, California, had a beautiful blue kind of ceiling, and they're very Catholic, so all of the accoutrements and adornments of, you know, wine and wafers and candles and ritual, and to feel it almost felt like the building itself was just overflowing with both sorrow and love. And her family, we of course wore black as one does, and I was not even the tiniest bit surprised that her daughters and her entire family, because of who she was, wore bright, flowered, summery clothes, and it sort of felt This is, I think, what I mean about the little things that make up a life. I think one of the big, um, there's all the nerdy ways of phrasing what Zen is about, you know, penetrating the great matter, or reaching the fundamental nature of reality. And I remember John telling me once he tried to, do a seminar at CIIS, and he marketed it something like engaging the fundamental questions of reality, and he didn't get any signups. Even though it's true, he said, "Well, I just gave him what I thought, what I thought was interesting." And it's true, we're doing that, but somehow underneath that, what we're asking or what we're engaging is, what is a good life? What is it to have and be and feel and notice a good life? And that in the spirit of not picking and choosing, that's somehow not about giving everything in exactly the right place or position, or becoming any kind of person, or even really working anything out or solving anything, but it's somehow the quality of attention and being that I'm bringing to every tiny moment of my life that somehow makes for this rich tapestry. And that whatever those threads are for us, they can never be predetermined. No one can tell you what they are or how they should go together or even what they mean. And the last sort of breadcrumb I think that John offered that comes into my mind about that is this whole notion of what is or is not useless. In that verse, spring comes with its flowers, autumn with the moon, summer with breezes, winter with the snow. When useless things don't cloud the mind, that is your best season. And you think, well, but what are the useless ones? How would I know? And I think part of what Wumen means in this verse, I was noticing when I was standing in this church, and there were moments, when you're in a setting like that, it's not unlike when you're here in the temple or when you're in a retreat, where you start to feel something and you just think, whose is this? Whose sorrow is this? Whose love is this? Whose anything is this? But I could feel how when certain moments of intensity would grow, and there were things that might be hard to be with, I could feel sometimes how my mind would skitter to really interesting things, like trying to discern where the origin of the tattoos of the person next to me, or making up stories about the person to my left. Or I thought that's part of the when useless things don't stick in the mind. If I don't get sort of obsessed with those things and think they're important or that I need to know them, it's just like watching them skitter like little creatures through my mind, and realize, oh, that's something that happens when it's hard to bear the great matter, the immensity of what's happening. And I could let my mind skitter, and then something would come back. And it definitely skittered when some of the hymns would emerge, and I would think, oh no, hymns. And I thought, no. And I would think, no, hymns are all right. I can do hymns. But that this is your best season when they don't stick in the mind. I don't think hymns are a problem, or that immense sorrow is a problem, or that anything at all is supposed to be happening or not happening. And that happens. They don't stick, then the world just begins to wash over. And it was interesting in this way of our lives being composed of the ordinary, because what the Father started with was a very tiny poem that said something like, "Yesterday, a bouquet of ordinary tasks burst into blossom." And this was his way of summarizing the life of my friend, in a sense, that her life was knit together by 100,000 ordinary tasks. And we all are, in fact. And I thought I'm just going to read you. Her husband wrote this pretty amazing obituary for her, which was quite a task for him. I think one of the great tasks of our life, in a way, is being able to face those moments and actually open to them. And I was very moved by the way that he did. But I'm going to read you just a little bit of it, because it's incredibly ordinary. And it just kind of feels like those 10,000 houses. She loved a hardware store. Her favorite sounds were chirping birds and laughing toddlers. She disliked flying. She found street art inspiring and habitually shared it. She once announced, "Nuts and strawberries don't belong in salads." The Pantone book of colors was one of her most cherished possessions. She preferred English gardens. She thought curiosity and kindness were two of the main ingredients of making a good human. Her prized tacos were once mentioned in Vogue magazine. She saw magic. She wasn't a very good driver, but had a perfect record. She said her prayers every night. She liked to sit on the floor. She was both fearless and vulnerable. She called you back. She never played pickleball, but declared that if she had, she would have been very good. The Hallmark Channel was unabashedly her favorite TV pastime. She didn't own much red clothing. She thought certainty was the 8th deadly sin. The last words she spoke individually to her daughters and her husband were, "I love you." The last words she said to her doctors in the ICU were, "Thank you." It goes on. But you realize none of this is particularly extraordinary, but it knits together. And her daughters found her this urn. It's quite beautiful, with birds, and looks like someone found it in a dream. And I thought, it's interesting. Whoever made this had no idea. To them, it was an ordinary task, creating their art, creating their ceramics. It's like for any of us, it's an ordinary task, making a meal or reaching out to a friend or sitting down to meditate. And not unlike the milkmaid in the Buddha story, you don't know why you're doing it. You don't know why you're calling someone back. You don't know why You don't buy much red. You don't know why you make these tacos. You don't know. You're just somehow that's the way, your way of opening those 10,000 doors, participating in the nature of things. And you may never know that something you make comes to hold someone for someone else, or comes to touch someone. Somehow this ordinariness, I'm going to read you something else about ordinariness. Somehow the way the world comes to us, comes through us, makes a life. This is called, this is just a few passages from a piece called Self-Portrait as Daily Sustenance by Ah-Hee Lee. While in Michigan, I make it a habit to invite friends over for dinner. I enjoy experimenting with the miscellany of ingredients in the fridge. Measurements from this country still confuse me, but instead of forcing myself to translate kilos into pounds and vice versa, I choose to trust my hands, their memory of weight. My friends, one from Honduras, another from Guatemala and Korea, say my cooking reminds them of their homes somehow. Our hearts are in their stomachs. They fill every spoonful we take. For me, a sickly child, my mother prepares a warm bowl of congee, sprinkles it with shredded chicken and sesame seeds. From across the table, she watches me take one careful mouthful of soft rice at a time, barely restraining liquid snot with whatever strength I have left in my nostrils. My mother says she likes watching how each bite makes moons rise out of my eyes. After a round of pulling at each other's hair for a trivial reason, I approach my sister and split an apple in hand. In Korean, the sound of the word apple, sagwa, also means to ask for forgiveness. We bite into the fruit and reconcile. I'm reminded forgiveness is something you can sink your teeth into, can limn what's sharp with honey. Maybe one more. This is the first time I'm on my own, my family and friends in a different hemisphere. Homesickness is a woman with a blurry face who wears my mother's worn apron, beckons me to cook what I cannot easily find near me. I fill the pot with broth and she licks the spoon. What's missing? I ask daily. She says maybe a dash of soy sauce or some crushed garlic cloves, 2 of those little bulbous teeth for depth. On a different day, she instructs, rub the oregano between your fingers to wake its scent. Or, for the rice, place your hand on top, pour the water until it makes an archipelago out of your knuckles. I try to find my way back home through the kitchen, but she scolds. Consider the potatoes. A Yukon Gold is a Yukon Gold, not a Papa Yungwe. I move on to boil something new. So it goes on, but you just see the whole universe steps forward, rubbing oregano between your fingers. Wake its scent. There's a musician, Australian, I think, named Lisa Gerard. Don't know if you've heard of her. She's done a lot of soundtracks and very powerful, interesting music, but I was listening to an interview with her recently. And she was telling about when she was a child. And she had, fairly ordinary childhood, but at a certain point she just realized that if she threw her hands up like this and started singing, that she would feel part of something that she didn't understand. She just knew when that happened, she would feel part of it. And that once she tasted that, once that happened to her, even once, she couldn't she couldn't forget it. She knew that that was a thing. And meditation is a lot like that. But any way of letting things, the vastness, appear through you, even through whatever thing this is, which might be, making a pear galette or kissing a child on the forehead, or some way that you can feel the vastness appearing through you. And oh, I'm part of this great cause, this thing that's happening. And there's later in this interview, she's standing under a freeway overpass, and the cars are, zooming by as they do. And you can feel, even by standing in her consciousness, having her consciousness in the screen, you start listening to the traffic in a different way. And she starts talking about how, well, when you're in a beautiful setting such as this one, and you have this inspiring sound, and you can feel, what? And then she starts to sing with the traffic, and the becomes this backdrop to this ethereal singing. And she says, I really wonder where we possibly draw that line between, this is a very Zen question, of course, what makes something noise? What makes it music? What makes it beautiful? What makes it ugly? What makes it grief? What makes it love? And not unlike standing in this church, there's a place you drop into where it's all of those things and none of those things at the same time. It's just and I liked that about her consciousness. And recently I was reading Yuan Wu, who wrote that beautiful, boundless, I with an I, knock on any door, someone will answer, is a whole book of his letters that someone put together. And letters are I love the letters of great minds, because they're a little different flavor, a little different consciousness than teaching or writing, it's writing, but it's intimate, it's pointed, it's revealing. There's something very, there's a reason love letters, letters from prison, letters from boarding school, there's a revelatory quality that can appear in letters. But he speaks in a lot of these letters. I'll just share with you a couple things. It's worth reading, the whole thing. But one of the sections he calls moving with a mighty flow. This is what we're learning to do, moving with a mighty flow. And he says, when your vision penetrates through and your use of it is clear, which is that space we're talking about, when it's just everything, you are spontaneously able to turn without freezing up or getting stuck amid all kinds of lightning-fast changes and complex interactions and interlocking intricacies. Life, modern life, is what he's talking about. You do not establish any views or keep any mental states. This is the not letting things stick in your mind. You move with it, a mighty flow, so that when the wind moves, the grasses bend down. When you enter right where you are, You penetrate to the profoundest source. You cultivate this realization till you attain freedom, harboring nothing in your heart. Here there is not even understanding to be found, much less not understanding. You don't get anything you get to hold on to. Just get that. And I've been noticing a lot recently just that feeling of when someone's not letting anything stick inside them, what it's like to be in their presence. Just the spaciousness that you can feel that starts to change things around it just by the nature of offering the space. And that's sort of the without doing anything at all. You're opening the bodhisattva path where you walk to honor that space. So I think that's all I want to say for now, but I'd love to hear maybe from some other people. Let's see. Todd, you have anything you'd like to say?
Hmm. Yeah. So when you were saying when you just a minute ago when you mentioned the highway traffic and vroom vroom and just that pattern, that sort of relentless nature of freeway traffic. Um, in my professional life right now, that relentless traffic is the march of AI coming into our business, and it's pretty interesting. And there's a lot to say in terms of uh, the impacts that it may or may not have. But in my own life, it's really quite engaging, and in a lot of interesting ways. And one way that I'm finding really the most fascinating right now is that it's kind of really just ripping away a lot of the uh, achievements or things that um, the value of or the value that I place on the skills and the things that I've learned in a long career of doing technology, um, because it's coming in and just kind of dumping it upside down, and that things that used to take weeks and months to do can now be accomplished in a matter of hours or days, and it's kind of terrifying in a lot of ways, but also really exhilarating. And but I've noticed that the what it's part of what it's doing is sort of letting me put down all of the gaining, because the skills, even the new skills that I've learned and how to use and how to work with AI are just quickly sort of being washed away again, and it feels kind of free that I just kind of keep going, keep engaging, and keep engaging with our customers and with my employees around what's happening. And it's it feels it feels light in a lot of ways, which I would not have expected.
Mm,
It's sort of like, well, you can't a lot, especially in business, a lot of what you try to do is create some value and then like hold on to that value and use that for, to pay the bills, really. But that doesn't seem to be there anymore. Like it just keeps getting stripped away. So we keep kind of having to reinvent what we're doing. And I kind of like it. Um, there's really nothing we can rely on. And it's bringing me, it's sort of, uh, because that's just so there for a big part of my day. Other things are coming forward, and things that, again, it's sort of like the ordinary things that are just, part of an everyday life. Like the thing right now that I'm noticing a lot, or that I'm dealing with a lot, is my dog Bella. After she eats a meal, about an hour or so later, she is clearly in some kind of distress. She starts to pant, and she wants to be near, and she needs attention. So I give her attention, and she's 100 pounds, so it's not the kind of dog you can pick up and cradle or do it in that way. So what I do is I lay down on the floor with her, and I just kind of wrap my arms around her and bury my face in her neck and just be with her.
Mm.
And she seems to like that. And so that's what we do, my dog and I. And I like that. And sometimes it's just walking down the hall in my house and notice the door frame. And there it is. And just that it's there, and its appearance in my life is pretty cool. It's pretty nice, just the door frame, or the door, or Boney Mountain in my backyard. The
Thanks.
ordinary things.
Thank you. Yeah, things that AI cannot do.
That's right. Yes,
Cuddle puppies that
exactly.
need love. Well, it's one of those interesting things where you're absolutely right. We think we know where it's going and what that will mean for us, and actually we have no idea yet. And that doesn't mean not engaging at all, but I mean, being in San Francisco was hilarious because we're driving on 80 and we realize we have no idea what these billboards mean. They all have to do with technology and AI, and it is not even a world in which I know what they're referring to. And yet, the ordinary tasks of our life come forward then if we're not trying so hard to be computers. It's interesting. Um, I also find it interesting, like, what ways people are engaging. Someone sent me I don't know if he's here today. Someone sent me a story. He started working with AI on a story of the universe where the cosmos itself is the hero. And at first, the AI didn't get what it was supposed to be doing. And finally, it said, "Oh, I understand what you want. You want the breath of the universe to be the hero." And so it goes through all these different events and puts life itself in the same cycle as it goes through everything. And you think, yeah, that seems about right. Um, Michelle, would you like to say anything? You have anything to say?
I noticed the topic of AI is incredibly appealing. It's like you start talking about AI, it's like, oh, I want to tell you my story about AI. Everything else went out of the mind. Uh, it's a huge force, though, that, like climate change. Um, I think I just want to say a couple things, not about AI. Um, I really, really like the story that you told, or that you shared with us, what the husband of the woman who died said about her at the service. Um, and it was, I was thinking, like, why is this so great? It's like a poem that points to the eternal through specifics, but it was that attention to detail, the particulars about her. It wasn't generic, wasn't my love. It was so particular, not even all what you would think is positive, but in that attention, he shared not only her, but also himself, what he noticed. Why did I notice that and not something else? And I know, John will often say, like, attention is a form of love. And I really felt that when you were reading um, and that attention, Tess, you too said, it's the quality of our attention and being that goes into making a good life. And that's what we have. It seems like to not be in not be on bad terms with whatever it is that we find happening. And sometimes we're not, and that's fine. But that to me is part of practice, like noticing when I'm on bad terms with whatever's happening. When I have some reservation, when I'm not meeting the moment and allowing it to be everything it might be. And instead, I'm protecting something. I always noticed a lot of my Zen friends over many, many years, I would go to visit them or something, and they would just smile, like with pure greeting, with no stories about what was going to happen or anything, just like, hi, here's the moment and you're in it. And that's a nice thing when we can do it. And then the thing about the musician who did this and sang, she sounds amazing. I got to get that name. But I thought, wow, how often do we somehow not do that? We have an urge to do something, whatever it is, and it could be cuddle your dog or whatever, and something says, oh, not that, not that. and when we don't do that, we might discover this is it. This for me makes the universe. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a new kitten, and what she seems to really like is for me to slap my legs and run around the house, and then she races as fast as she can from one end of the house to the other. And I was thinking, this is uselessness. This is absolute uselessness, and it's great. You made me think of one more poem I want to read, Michelle, and then maybe we'll sit a little more and hear from a couple other folks. There's not a chance I'm going to pronounce this word, but it's the name of the poem, so bear with me. Amiesenvertelungsmaschine. This is one word. Amiesenvertelungsmaschine. If someone speaks German, they will correct me and I'll appreciate it. My disapproving mother tells me nobody wants to read poems about ant distribution machines. In fact, nobody wants to read poems at all. They are unnecessary. No one has ever heard of such a thing as a wealthy poet. So isn't it really worthwhile, she tells me, I should consider writing a best-selling novel or maybe the screenplay for a family saga if I insist on being difficult. At least give the short story collection a go. Except she says all of this in German, and the German word for ant distribution machine is Amiesenvertelungsmaschine. I decide it is now my favorite word. I decide to write a poem to be pure and obscure. It will be a poem of defiance about what at first seems like a nonsense invention. Who would buy such a useless machine? Who needs help distributing ants? They are not very popular pets. But here's the beauty of my Amiesenvertelungsmaschine. It actually turns the critters into lovely new shapes. Tiny giraffes, little kangaroos and cows, a miniature camel small enough to make it through the ear of the largest needle. That's it. It's the most useless, delightful poem you'll ever hear. Where did he go? John Joseph, anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'm just really loving this talk, and I was really touched by your friend's husband reading his letters, and how often he said he was lucky, and I don't know, I just feel so lucky to be part of the great cause and the great flow, and my kids have always said that their father is lucky. I'm not sure I agree, but my daughter at 6 a.m. this morning, she headed off to from San Francisco to Los Angeles on a bike ride. So she'd be gone a week, and over the last couple of months, I said, "Well, how's the training going?" And she said, "Well, couple of weeks ago, I rode 40 miles, and she's got some 110-mile days. She said, I guess I'm going to have to depend on my youth. And I'm thinking as she's riding along the road and we're following, she's got a tag on, and it goes dink, 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 dink on the map, GPS, and how she's riding along, and the singer's traffic vroom is going by, vroom is going by, and she's riding. It's an AIDS Foundation ride, and she's riding for her great uncle who died 40 years ago, and her grandfather just passed away 2 days ago, and they were very, very close. One went off to West Point, became a lawyer. The other had a kind of a lost life and contracted AIDS and passed away at a young age. And I guess, I don't know, I just feel lucky to be part of this all.
Thanks, John. Did I understand correctly at the beginning that they tell you you're lucky, as in you're lucky to have them?
Um, Yeah, I feel I'm lucky to have them. I don't know if they're talking about that. They just see the improbable path I've taken in my life, and
You're lucky in
I think
general.
I'm kind of lucky. Yeah, yeah.
Actually, I thought maybe you were insinuating. We have a Sarah Bender, who's a sort of adjacent teacher to us, told a story one time that when she was little, she and her little brother were coming home from a long trip with their family. And he said, my friends are going to be so happy to see me. They must have missed me so much. And the thought occurred to her, like she never would think that thought ever in her life. And she envied him so much in that moment that people just think, oh, he thinks, oh, the world must love me. I must belong. So I thought maybe that's what they were, but thank you, John. Well, I wanted to tell you one last little thing, and then we'll get out of here about you were reminding me, Michelle, of where we're going to Session in a couple weeks, this place called Mount Madonna, which is way up in the Santa Cruz Mountains and very vast and tall. Some of you know this story, but a few years ago, the last time we went there, as we were sitting Session, they were building a giant demon outside that was about 20 or 30 feet tall. And the entire week that we're that we're meditating, we're hearing all this hammering and talking, and they're making with this giant fork and giant knife, they're making this huge demon as part of a ceremony that they do in their tradition, Hindu tradition. And the idea is that at the end, they're going to take it up Saturday night and they're going to burn it and they're going to do this ceremony. And so we ride the horse the way it's going, and we work with demons during the week. We have a demon exercise, and but you can feel the growing, not unlike AI, you feel the tantalizing, ooh, we're going to leave the Zendo on Saturday night and we're going to get to go do the demon. And isn't that going to be amazing? And isn't, all this stuff. And so the excitement builds, and we go up and we see them. Nobody can shoot too many flaming arrows because, it's California, but it's a passionate demon burning and little children, and it's magical for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then everyone immediately goes back to the Zendo and wants to sit in silence and for the rest of the evening. And you were just making me think of that, Michelle, that in a sense, it's so fun to be tantalized. And you think it's gonna, AI is gonna be, it's gonna be. And then you think, oh, but it's nice to meditate. It's nice to somehow just be here and be quiet when you can get it. So thank you for being with me today. John Tarrant should be back next week. I'm sure he'll be very happy to see you. And I think it's the last week or so you can sneak in to Session if you'd like to join us. We would love to have you. And otherwise, a new open temple starts tomorrow. So sitting is a nice thing. Thank you very much. And I think Amaryllis and Jordan are going to give us some vows.